Hi everyone, welcome to the CrossForge Gaming Review of MOTHERGUNSHIP. First off, I'd like to begin by thanking the developers for sending us a copy of the game. I've actually really enjoyed playing it for the last couple days. It's been very interesting. If this is the first you've heard of MOTHERGUNSHIP, let me break down the game a little bit for you. It mixes gun crafting, bullet hell, and just plain insanity at some points. You play as a hapless recruit that somehow gets dragged into a resistance fight against robotic aliens that have already taken over the Earth. The game's main strength is the wide variety of weapons you can build. You basically can just combine any amount of parts into building like the craziest gun you can think of. There's three different parts. There's connectors, barrels, and caps. Connectors are what you put the barrels on, so your actual guns will be the barrels, and the connectors are what let you add more and more barrels to one weapon. You have a right-handed weapon and a left-handed weapon, and you can build each one differently to match different situations. Like you can make one long range, you can make one short range. It's basically whatever you want to do to try to maximize the amount of enemies you can take out. Then, so you have connectors and barrels, and then the third type is caps. Now, caps are items that add modifiers to your weapon. Like, for example, it'll add critical chance, you could get reduced pushback, you could do extra damage. Sometimes the caps have a drawback because of how strong the advantage is giving you, so sometimes it'll make you move slower, and so on. There's no ammo in the game, but each weapon has an energy bar that decreases when you use it, and when it's fully depleted, it takes some time to charge back up. The more firepower your guns are producing, the faster the depletion rate of your energy levels, which at times really kind of sucks because the whole point of the game is to build ridiculous weapons, right? And most of the time, if you like add a bunch of barrels to a gun, you can't. It's not really viable because you can only shoot it a couple times before it needs to recharge the energy, and it's honestly pointless. Like, there's a couple of types of barrels that you can basically use on repeat from beginning of the game till the end of the game, and they're always viable, which kind of makes it difficult to want to try other types of the barrels. I mean, like, some of the barrels are just honestly straight up useless. I'm looking at you, spike ball launcher. Like, without making the whole gun focus on making the spike ball launcher kind of viable, it's just not fun to use it. Some of the missile launchers are also a little, they're just too heavy. Like, the missiles take forever to get to the target, so you really have to focus on aiming it, and they don't do enough damage to justify using it. Meanwhile, like, the railgun is just insanely powerful the whole time through. One major thing I noticed about the game is it does get a bit repetitive. The voice acting for the game is really good. The characters are pretty interesting. It focuses a lot on slapstick humor between the characters, like they banter with each other a lot. There isn't really an insanely serious story. I mean, the story is kind of thin on the basics, but I mean, you're not really playing this kind of game for a story per se. So the way the game is set up is you start at different missions. You're basically destroying a ship, and each ship contains several rooms. The different rooms in the on the ships contain different mixes of enemies, and like the rooms are set up differently. So you could be in a small room that basically you don't have much room to kite in. You try to avoid them by just jumping around the same area. Some rooms are multi-leveled, so you can go up and down by using these little like energy launchers that'll push you up into the sky. You also have a jump that can be upgraded an insane amount. Like, one level I upgraded my jump to almost 18 jumps. I really like the mobility. It makes it a lot of fun to try to avoid the enemy damage because you get so much damage thrown at you at times. A lot of the enemies focus you an insane amount because there's just so much going on. The difficulty in the main game basically just depends on how the room's built. Like, for example, some of the rooms, they just pack so many enemies into such a small area that it's impossible to avoid damage. And the health pack pickups, you basically can only get health from certain enemies randomly dropping health, and sometimes they just don't drop health. And there's just so much going on that sometimes it's impossible to avoid taking damage. So I've had a couple of deaths that have just been I just really couldn't do anything about it, and that makes it really frustrating at times. Another source of damage you can take is the rooms actually have like certain environmental damage factors. Like some of the rooms have lava, some of them have, I think it's toxic waste basically, that if you touch you get damage from. Some of them have these enemies that project lasers that if you touch also do damage. There's a lot of ways to get hurt in the game, and getting health back is not the easiest thing. You can upgrade your health, but getting experience points to do any of the upgrades there's just way too many experience points required to level up, in my opinion. I feel like that's one thing that they definitely need to focus on, is maybe reducing the cap between each level, because you have so much stuff you want to upgrade. You want to upgrade your jumps, you want to upgrade your maximum health, you can upgrade your energy level, you can upgrade your secret reveal level. There's just so much stuff you can upgrade, and you just don't get enough points to want to upgrade it all as much as you can. I think that's another problem I have with the game, is the just sheer amount of RNG that like centers around the game. For example, the level design from each ship to ship, it's never the same. All right, and that's both a blessing and a curse, because I mean it keeps things interesting. But for example, some levels, you get shops at the end of each room. Like some rooms contain shops. Some levels you can get 6 shops in the same level, which gives you plenty of access to health and extra gun parts so you can upgrade your weapons and extra connectors and so on. And some levels you have 1 shop in the whole level, which makes it really hard because you're stuck with the 1 gun that you brought with you, because you can only bring a set amount of gun parts to each mission. And it just makes it very difficult to go through the level, because if you don't have access to a shop, you really can't do much to upgrade your weapon. So if you bring the wrong gun parts with you at the beginning of a level, and like for example, everybody in the next couple of rooms is long range, and you have a close range shotgun that you brought with you, it basically makes it useless. So you have to get very close, and you'll end up dying and going over again. Some levels you have plenty of access to shops, but the only way to buy stuff in the shops is through coins that enemies drop. And if you, again, it's RNG, so there's no guarantee you're going to get any coins. Like sometimes you'll only get 5 coins in a whole level, which makes it impossible to buy anything, which again kind of I feel like defeats the purpose of the game, because the whole purpose of the game is for you to build crazy guns to go through, right? And I feel like that's definitely something they need to focus on, maybe, is just some stability when it comes to how many shops you're going to get per level, or how many coins. There's a threat level at the beginning of each room that'll let you know how bad the next room is going to be, but again, there's no real way to determine what the threat level is describing. Like, and again, your level as the player, it doesn't tell you whether or not that affects how much the threat level changes. Like for example, if I go back to the same mission but I'm a level higher, does that mean the threat level will go down because the enemies are easier to kill? I feel like a little more information on just the threat level, the player level. Each level itself also has an enemy level next to it, and that a little more information would be really nice, so that way you know more about what to do. There's different ways of beating each mission. For example, each of the rooms, you can go straight to the exit room and shoot at it, and it'll open the doors. So you don't have to kill all the, like if you're in a room that's very difficult, you can just shoot the exit door and move on. But you're also missing out on the chance of getting coins to upgrade your guns, because most of the rooms, if that room is difficult, most of the rooms are probably going to be at least a similar level of difficulty. So you probably want to try at least to beat the rooms, get some coins in, and hope that maybe the next room has a shop to upgrade your weapons. All the shops contain gun crafting benches, so that way if you're like in a level and you're like, this gun is useless, I want to modify it, you can take apart and reassemble guns. So you can reuse connectors, you can reuse barrels, and I really like that. Like the gun crafting in the game feels really smooth. The gunplay itself feels really smooth. The controls are very responsive. It's really fun. None of the enemies are very difficult to kill. I just feel like the main frustrating thing about the game is that whenever you're in a room that's just, there's so much going on. You have missiles shooting at you, you have enemies that are chasing you close range. Sometimes you just get really overwhelmed, and like it'll also kill your frame rate a couple of times. Like I have a pretty good computer built, and at times the frame rate dipped to 30 or 20 frames just because of the sheer amount of stuff that's going on screen. Um, and I feel like reducing the quantity of enemies at times and increasing the like actual quality to make them a little more difficult to beat, it would probably make it a lot more satisfying. Sometimes you just die because you literally got swarmed by so much going on. Like some rooms are literal walls of just missiles going at you, and some of the missile launchers can't be destroyed, the ones that are built into the wall. So that part was a little frustrating for me. However, I do think that the game adjusts to it pretty well just by not making every room like that. A lot of the rooms are very fun to beat the enemies. Between each room you get some interplay between the characters, like in this actual story. They crack a couple jokes. I mean, the game doesn't take itself too seriously, you know? It's a very, it's a very relaxed game. I enjoyed playing it quite a bit. One of the things I feel like also needs a little work is once you've completed the main storyline, there really isn't much to do. Like there's an endless mode where you can keep going against waves of enemies in different rooms, and just keep upgrading your guns. And there's a couple of side missions, but it's the same stuff over and over again. Like once you've seen the rooms a couple times, like they can't really change much in the rooms. So there's like the same level of enemies and so on. I think that'll be fixed a little bit once they introduce co-op mode a little down the line. I feel like this would be a really fun couch co-op game where you could just play with a friend, just like um, maybe take on the endless mode together. I think it would be interesting to see how much the levels change if you're playing it single-handedly versus co-op. Like, will there be more enemies? Will they be harder to kill? And so on. But again, I would definitely say the game is worth the 25 bucks. I enjoyed playing it. It was a great time killer. Again, the gunplay itself is very smooth. Like, the controls are responsive. I just feel like there's a couple of issues that the devs need to focus on, but if they fix them, I would definitely see this game being pretty entertaining in the future and definitely worth the money. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll see you next time.